music. I mean, I like Elvis Presley. I mean, I used to like Elvis Presley, but I don't agree with his politics. I don't see what it's got to do with anything really. When you can you can watch a film with John Wayne in it and like it. It doesn't. You don't have to dislike it because I think that's a danger when everybody agrees with the political viewpoints of the group. I think that's really sinister to me.
Yeah, we are the fallen, we are the best. Yeah, we are the fallen, we are the best. Yeah, we are the fallen, we are the best. Yeah, we are the fallen, we are the best.
Perverted by Language ready to go because I got the deepest fall collection.
This is how do you have this? How do you have all of them? You just have to. In order to do this, you actually have to have all of them.
It's not worth it otherwise.
Mm-mm. No chance. And yeah, and today we are jumping into Perverted by Language is today's album that we're going to get into. But I'm just wondering, is Mark, he does use bad words sometimes, doesn't he?
Every once in a few lyrics, there's usually a bad word.
But he uses it for really not to shock you, but he uses it in a very tasteful manner a lot of the times. Not always, but a lot of the times. But you don't really hear him, using the F word, using I mean, you get the C word, you get well, we know he has used the N word. We know this. In a in a manner in a context where a lot of people I think aren't getting the multiple meanings, which I don't think all of them are.
Today's light, a lot of his words would not be, PC anymore. But in 1983, you probably can get away with a little bit more.
Yeah, totally. And also, this brings up the good discussion of, and I think we led off with a quote from Mark talking about separating the artist from the actual art, and you can appreciate it. And I think if you're listening to this podcast, you've obviously come to terms with separating the art from the artist and being able to appreciate art as as its as its own thing, right? As its own soul entity. And the person that made it, if they're interesting, then as in this case, very interesting, then it just adds something to it. But you don't have to be married to the person. You don't have to be loving them. Even Mark says, he's a big Elvis fan, or he was a big Elvis fan, but it doesn't mean he likes Elvis's politics, right? Or he could watch a John Wayne movie and not be infatuated by John Wayne the person, but he can still just immerse himself in John Wayne the character and just appreciate that. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I
He's
mean,
a bad
absolutely.
guy.
He probably wouldn't be my best friend, but yeah, like you said, I think you can
That would be his
appreciate
choice. That would be his choice not to be your friend.
the art. I mean, it's tough with all of the, the cancel culture and things like that nowadays to necessarily do it and not get flack from one side or the other of either still appreciating the art or a full denunciation of the person, everything they've done, everything they've created.
Yeah.
In the last 5-10 years, it's just been, the dirty laundry's been getting aired. And
yeah. I think I've thought about it a lot, and I think I've come to terms with it as far as when it comes down to the bottom line, if you know, if it's a, let's say, a quote unquote bad person makes a beautiful thing, and I tell myself, that was a bad person, you should never listen to that thing or watch that thing or see that thing again, the only person that it's really harming is me. So in a very self-centered way, you know, you only live once, you only are on this planet one time, as far as I know, except for, you know, well, we can get into the alternative realities, but the, you know, if I'm not going to be able to appreciate or be able to access art because someone was not the best person, that's only hurting me and making my time here less beautiful. And I think that every person deserves to make it their experience as beautiful as possible. And if they appreciate something that came from a source that is not that morally positive, then so be it. I can totally disconnect. I just have gone to that level where I'm not, it's never even a consideration anymore. And also I can no person is perfect, and it's very much, every human being is kind of a uh grayscape. You know, it's all sorts of, it's way more complex than black and white.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. And I guess I don't have anybody really, any artist or anybody that I'm like, oh, I love what they've created and I really hate who they are. So I guess it's tough for me to make that judgment call because I'm not really having to withhold too much out of my life.
A
I'm not a
heinous,
big R
yeah.
Kelly fan. If I never listened to another R Kelly song, I would be fine. Like I think it's tough.
You're going against your Chicago roots.
I
Okay.
guess, but you're just kind of like, I don't know. If they're harming others purposefully, you're kind of like,
Yes.
maybe the dirt, lifting up the covers and seeing what's underneath the beautiful thing is it's a little less tantalizing or beautiful than it once was, knowing some of the nitty gritty of it. But I mean,
Yeah.
as far as Mark E goes, I mean, probably not the nicest, friendliest guy, but he doesn't seem like he was out there really harming very many other people besides himself in a real way, maybe
Yeah, in
mentally,
a
but
heinous way. You're right. You're right. I mean, and people have their own personal stories, and I don't. Because since we don't have a personal connection, it's easier for us to do this, and also we can just disconnect it much easier than someone that is connected to any person like that in a daily life, or even for an extended period of time. Let's jump into a positive note on this album. We're getting into Perverted by Language, 1983. The fall, go back to Rough Trade Records to release this album. This album is an album that maybe Steve, we should let the listeners know. We've been pushing this one back in the schedule of tackling it, mainly because, from my perspective, I didn't think I was. I don't know. I think I feel better about it, but I was not ready for this one, because every time I listen to this album, it is like an enigma. It's totally, I almost feel like it's a shapeshifter. It changes every time I listen to it into something else. Never in a negative way, but just in a different way where I can't wrap my fingertips around it to pull it closer, because it's just changing so much. How do you feel about
yeah,
as a no?
I was excited to get back and do a full length album.
Mhm.
We've been bouncing around having fun with all the the side things,
Side
which has
journey.
been great. But yeah, I did enjoy, kind of like you said, I enjoyed listening to one thing a lot. And I agree, it changed. It kind of depended on, did I listen to it straight through? Was I
Mhm.
driving somewhere and I caught, tracks 1 through 3, and then I got back in the car and it was 4, 5, 6. Like, where was I in the album, and what sounds did
You
I
might have
walk
still been
away
on
from?
track one, or you might have been halfway through the garden, you know. You might have been halfway through in your errands, and you're still on that one.
Exactly. And yeah, and you've got some long burners on here and not very many quick ones. I mean, really only
No.
two fast songs. And then the second fast song is the one with Bricks, which is just a total kind of oddball in the whole album. Overall, I
Yeah.
enjoyed playing it a lot and getting the noise and the feelings out of it.
I think I'll be upfront because it's much more interesting. I was familiar with all of the fall albums as far as roughly familiar, listened to 'em up until this point in their career. This is the kind of the cutting edge of where it kind of goes into whole new fresh territory for me. Like, I don't know about you, but from this point forward, I knew a couple tracks on Perverted by Language, but the album itself, listening to it front to back, I had never done it before we started getting into it. And then after this is a whole new territory, which I'm excited to get into. It's interesting because I have talked to multiple people who say this is actually the starting point for them where they faded out of the fall soundscape, at least for a period of time, where Brix comes into the band, and she only comes in on one song here, but she is present because Mark is in love, and Mark is in love and newly married and happily married, and I think we'll be talking about that as we get into some of these songs. This is interesting because I know that there's fall heads out there that they say that when Brix comes into the band, it changed for them in a way that wasn't something that sustains their listening as a fall head. How do you feel?
Hotel Blodell is just, I mean, it's just her basically. And it's not a bad song. I'm not disappointed by it, but it is not, it sounds like the fall kind of, but yeah.
I think there is the perception that she kind of forced her way into getting it, but I mean, she said that they needed another song, which it kind of sounds like the fall. It kind of sounds like the fall where they said, we need to fill up the album, right? Because if they only have 8 tracks on here, so it kind of makes sense. And then she said they needed another song, and then Mark had heard her demos, and the first night they met, he heard her demos, and he was like, "Come live with me, be with me, come to the UK, come back to Manchester. We'll get you a record deal. You'll be living a new life as an artist, right?" And so he knew her songs, and he's like, "Play this song. Sit down, play this song." Um,
So this was her song. I guess I don't even know that.
yeah, so this was her song that she had recorded with a demo with her band in Chicago that she played in. And Mark basically said, yeah, play that one. But then we'll get into when we get to this track, but the whole kind of the story, it all comes from their experience together at a certain place in Germany at a hotel. And it changes drastically sonically, as we know, because Mark and the band are all over it, even though it's really just her just strumming along on that guitar, and they build this thing around it. Who do we got here? Steve, who do we got playing on Perverted by Language in 1983 in the fall?
So, obviously Marky Smith on vocals, piano,
No.
and violin.
3-string violin.
Craig Scanlon on the guitar and vocals, Steve Hanley on the bass, Paul Hanley, drums and keyboards, Carl Burns, drums and vocals, and Brix Smith on guitar and vocals. She's only on tracks 1 and 4 of the album.
Mm-hmm. And she does on the first track, she does those backing vocals with the rest of the band, it sounds like. And then she gets that lead the first time we get like a little duet on the fall record. And this is an 8-track record, but this is packed. It's, as usual, you're getting your money's worth from the fall. Let's jump into the first track on Perverted by Language.
Eat Yourself. Bitter.
Nice.
I'm in the furniture trade, got a new job today. Stick the cretin, the number 3 lathe. them club, a sign and a cross, and a couple well dressed. They looked at my coat, they looked at my hair. An easy rider coupe grabbed the edge of my coat, said you're too smart for here, said I'll see the manager. He was the manager. Eat yourself better. Up the stairs, mister.
How do you feel about such a dynamic opening track by The Fall?
That is classic Fall. I didn't not much new there. It starts off and you know what you're gonna get, and I mean,
If you don't know what you're gonna get, it is a surprise that that is exactly what you get.
yeah, absolutely. Do you like brand cereal? Are you a big Kellogg's fan?
Know what's really perverted though? This is a great, I love the title Perverted by Language. It's perfect for Mark, it's perfect for The Fall. But what is truly perverted is they never once had a lyric sheet in any of their albums. Like the provided lyrics in either are on the cover, on the side. You know, you could maybe get like a line or two, but never provided straight up. Why do you think that is?
I think it was just Mark's kind of ambiguity, right? Like his words never, I mean, not never. They weren't always one thing, right? They were something to him and he wanted them to be something to you versus this is exactly what it is and kind of laid out there in front of you.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. The mystery of the band, right? The mystery of the band. He always about the presentation of the band, getting on band members for looking like goofballs in, a public place that is like a place where you would have fun, a bar, a nightclub. But you get on them for that because the presentation, it's all about the presentation, the thoughtfulness of it, and not providing the lyrics gets that mystery going. And also, it probably just costs too much. He's got so many words, it would just cost too much to be have that all printed up.
Well, yeah, and some forethought. You got to get that to the printer well before it's released.
You
So
can't just have the notebook full of
you, you can't just
scrawled
drop
out,
it. You
yeah.
can't just drop your bag off at the front door of the record label and say figure it out.
Yeah, that's like the like William S. Burroughs style, like the
Yeah,
Naked
yeah,
Lunch where
exactly.
all the
Naked. Yeah,
papers
here
are
it
all,
is.
yeah, there it is. They're all scattered.
Here's my book. Good luck.
Yep. If you want to listen to the music and try to piece it together, that would be cool with me. But if you don't, then that is what it is. So Eat Yourself Fitter there's so many little vignettes and little interactions between the multiple choruses. So even though this musically does not have any sort of dynamics, it is straight up. Oh, the only dynamics are when the band drops out and the whole jumps in for the backing vocal chorus. That is as dynamic as it gets. A
A
silence
little
and then a scream.
a little bit of laddering in the back half where they could go up and down. Mark gets a little scary on the mic, but yeah, no, it is consistent throughout. And hey, if you can keep up that pace for 6 minutes and 35 seconds without screwing it up, good on you.
Yes, and that brings us to a good point. I think this, like we said, this is an album that is hard to wrap your head around because it's halfway between a fall back to their roots album where they go, strip everything back, go straight for a no chorus album, no sort of change ups or limited change ups, and musically just let Mark be at the forefront and deliver his lyrics. And so it's kind of a back to basics, but Mark is at a point where he's such a good lyricist, like he's built up this skill set so well that it almost does call for 6 minute, and then we get 8 minute songs that let him just go off. But I would like to have more from the band, but I also think that this is an album that is also maybe not musically um a spotlight album, but there is one instrument that I think really does carry this entire album, and I'll tell you right after we listen to Neighborhood of Infinity. So, Steve, do you have a guess which instrument I think is the signature instrument of this album?
Your favorite keyboard?
Nope. Second guess?
Didn't hear any kazoo. I know that's your second favorite. We're going with
Nope.
the violin.
Nope.
All right, what do you got?
It's an instrument actually played by two guys.
Yeah, the drums. I was gonna say the heaviness of that song was what made it. I mean, it was in your face musically, which
There's
is nice.
there's something about this album that really lets the Carl and Paul go to the forefront, and they do play so many interesting beats on this album that have to be in a double drummer setup. They have to be so tight for so long. It's really just, as we move forward, just keep your ears open if you haven't really appreciated the drumming of styles of Carl and Paul together, because this album I think really does give it to you, where the even the guitars are pushed, the guitar sounds are pushed back, everything is almost pushed back, and the drums, even on this song Neighborhood of Infinity, those toms are just like in your fucking face. And I think that crack, they gave me like a crack that I was able to crawl into this album through, where I was like, dang, it's not even about that. Even the mix of this album does not even call for a lot of dynamics. So what are you gonna get? You're gonna get the drums just pummeling, but also in time with each other, which is
Yeah, I
so
mean, I was
fun.
gonna say years of playing together at this point, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
not like these are fresh-faced high
Yeah.
school, just getting out of high school. They've been at it.
And they're doing it. We didn't really get into the lyrics on Eat Yourself Fitter. Let's talk about the lyrics real quick. Are you have any favorite lyrics of that one or this one? Because even in Eat Yourself Fitter, the stories are great that are him at the HM Club. Do you know what HM Club is? I don't think it's been confirmed, because I think there's a bunch of interpretations. But the only thing I found was like a heavy metal club. And I like that it's marketed a heavy metal club, where he's like, they tell him he's too smart for the place, and he's like trying to talk to the management, and like it's so fun. I could definitely see him there. He's just trying to get a pint and like maybe see what the band's looking like, and they're like, no, 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 this isn't for you, buddy. This is not for you. You got your Argyle sweater on. You're not ready. You're not ready to come in here.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like what you were wearing was a way bigger deal than not that back then than it is like now, right? I mean, I don't know. You go into a punk or a heavy metal club and you're going to see everybody dress
Yeah.
different ways. I mean, certainly there is a standard, but like I don't feel like anybody's out there getting shit on if you're not dressed the way the bar is set up, right?
Oh yeah, you're just like, oh yeah, that's just that guy over there that's in that giant rabbit costume is just a furry. Like I know what that is. Like there's you could just have any person in there. It's like, oh yeah, that's just that type of, that's how they present themselves. That's how they associate themselves with, a bunch of random um gear, a bunch of random tactical gear. That's just how that guy walks around. That's how he feels safe. That's just how it is. Yeah, there's just so much more variation where people are so aware of these subcultures that it's not that it's more accepted because everyone is like, oh, I have heard about that, so it's not that crazy. But back then, you're like, no, this is my group. Like, there's only a couple groups. Like, there's even like what was it, the Beatles, like the Teddy Boys. The Teddy Boys. You're wearing leather. That's just a weird thing to me, like as an American, to be like, what was that about? Where you're trying to be a greaser, but also you're called a teddy boy, which is not, from my perspective, sounding that hard or that dangerous.
Is it Teddy Roosevelt? Because he was a badass.
No, no, this is UK. This is Teddy Boys. It's two words that go together where you're like, oh, that is not tough at all. That is not. I don't know. I don't know if they were trying to be tough. Maybe they're just trying to be real slick, which is definitely what they were.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, and I guess it was the point it truly was a way to identify yourself to others and say this is what I'm into.
this is me. It's the typical thing where everyone goes through it about adolescent period where you're just like, this is what I latch onto. This is what makes me comfortable, or this is actually just what I want to be associated with. So I'm going to go all in. And Mark is at this point, he could go into a heavy metal club and be fine, but the way he was looking with the mullet, with the, you know, he's probably wearing some sort of tweed vest, trench coat. I don't know. Oh, actually, I do know because we should talk about it. There's a video, I guess, album that goes along with Perverted by Language that I think the band self-financed, and it has a lot of the tracks, visuals for these tracks, and we highly recommend it. And these songs that are not that dynamic actually really lend themselves, wouldn't you say, to having a visual along with them? Eat Yourself Fitter, and then even some of the singles at the time. Oh, Kicker Conspiracy. So actually, it's like a lot of the sing. I think maybe it's
Yeah,
more of the
this it's all the
singles,
singles. Yeah,
more of the singles. But either way, it's the same era, and as far as I'm concerned, they're all songs that go together well from the same era. The band walking around, the band being bored, it's all good. Band in the pub.
kind of when MTV was coming out as well. So I'm sure the music video was expanding, right? You're seeing more of them.
What
Well,
is it? What does Eat Yourself Fitter mean to you?
so the year before, Kellogg's came out with a all brand cereal, and that was their slogan.
Mm.
Mark says he thought it was an original, and he denies taking it from Kellogg's. He said maybe I heard it on TV and it just earwormed me, and I did it. But
Huh.
he claims it was an original. It was an original title when he wrote it, but I think 1982 Kellogg's all brand cereal was basically a diet cereal. Eat this brand and you'll get skinny.
Okay, that makes total sense. I mean, when I first heard it, or actually when I've been listening to it nowadays, I was associating with definitely something Mark pulled because it's just such a phrase where it's a slogan. And I definitely thought he pulled it possibly from a self-help like a self-help book, and I could definitely see him in a used bookstore flipping through books, looking through the racks, and then there's a book that says "Eat Yourself Fitter," and it's like a diet, 21
Sure.
recipes, bullshit, like all this. I mean, and not to say if you're out there doing any of that, good on you, but if Mark, that's just right for the pulling of Mark for his paper and then right to the bag because Eat Yourself Fitter is such a self-help thing. And Mark was all about people. He thought people were always just blaming the government in making excuses for themselves as not having a good life or not having the things that they deserve. And which is really interesting because Mark was always saying the same thing about the music business, but he was always talking about these types of perspectives and mentalities as being detrimental when he's thought that they should basically just, to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and like, do something, do something, go out there,
Sure.
get
Yeah.
something done. Like that was Mark's perspective for almost everything. And you make sense from a creative guy.
And he'd love to take a general population popular idea and just kind of try to shit on it as much as he could in a sly way, right? Like I'm gonna take that idea that a lot of people think is interesting and cool, and I'm gonna tear it down.
He always wants to be in control, so this perspective of if you don't like what you're seeing around you, then do something different is definitely something that he lived, right? Even though he was pissed off about not getting what he wanted, he lived the, oh, guess what? Rough Trade isn't giving me what I want as far as what I think I deserve. Then what am I going to do? Something about it. Next label, please. We're going to go shopping around. And the way that in the first track he sings, don't want to be a victim, this is just such a fun sing-songy, pretty much cut the legs out from anyone that wants to be like, but I can't, I can't do it. I need this or whatever, or I need something else. Like Mark is just cutthroat is a to want to be a victim is just like making it into a fun. Yeah, it's so.
He wants to see the manager,
and then he talks right to the manager.
And then I do like the middle bit about the computer because where's the cursor?
Me
Where's
too.
the eraser? I mean, seeing Mark on a computer would be interesting. I can't imagine he spent many hours at one in his life.
No chance.
No.
That's a typewriter. But the became a recluse and bought a computer, set it up in the home. Elusive big one. Elusive big one is always the line that gets me where it's like, oh, I got the elusive big computer, so now I'm set. And then on the screen saw the Holy Ghost, I swear, on the screen. That is bringing in that hex, bringing in the ghosts, bringing in the paranormal into the technology. That he's way ahead of his time. I'm loving it. He's spot on. It's so fun. All right, we're going backwards. We're going forwards, but
and then
this is the type of album that deserves it.
I don't think there's any meaning, but the GOHO90. I'm like, what is that going? What's going on there? And I found nada. So if somebody knows what that was, you let me know.
Though what I was thinking about this the other day, which is I know what I kind of pictured that as. Pictured that as almost he was sitting in front of a computer and he was like trying to get it going or whatever, get it to work, and it's just like 0009 HLO.
He's trying to type in Holy Ghost.
Yeah,
Holy Ghost. Let's see what I find.
It's just popping up for him. He thinks it's talking to him. That's fun. That's so fun. This is one of the first coders, Marquis Smith, one of the first coders, is breaking the code. We just had a very short jaunt into the neighborhood of infinity. Very ironic that it's the shortest song on here. But should we maybe take a longer excursion? Maybe not so beautiful place, but maybe a place that people might be tricked into thinking it's safe.
Let's go to the garden.
Let's go to the garden.
First God has in his garden from the back looks like.
How'd you like your journey into that garden?
I mean, that is fantastic, interesting, great all-around Marquis Smith lyrics. I mean,
who is Wild Bill Hick?
I think he's a Wild West.
Do you know? Oh, Wild West guy?
Yeah, Wild West.
A soldier?
Yeah.
A Wild West frontiersman?
Yeah, I was reading about him. Yeah, he was a scout, soldier, sheriff, and gunslinger in the Old West.
That's right up Mark's alley. I am not surprised that is.
He was also an actor in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show.
Mm, okay. Double meaning as usual. I hate to say it again, but I got to. Paul and Carl are just holding it down, and they're playing a very simple beat. But if you're playing a very simple beat like this for 8 minutes and you're not, and you have no feel, like you're just doing it like a robotic, like you're so technically sound, you do robotically, you're really gonna just tune out. And because they have a feel of and we brought up Mo Tucker before, which is definitely a fall influence. It is this kind of human feel, and this is has even a little Mark tapes. It almost sounds like Mark's tapes, doesn't it, in the middle when he's doing the
Yeah,
spoken word?
you gotta think that it was, right?
Yeah, a couple different tapes that are spliced in there or mixed into the track because they kind of do fade in and out, like they're almost like cut into it, and they have different sound quality. And yeah, Mark talking about
Talking about
garden,
gods, yeah, the first god, the second
pretty
god.
straightforward actually.
Yeah, yeah, interesting to hear. I mean, he doesn't really comment on God very frequently, at least not for 8 minutes.
Yeah,
Interesting to just like see his perspective on, I mean, as usual, it's almost a perspective on humans versus the gods themselves, but like, yeah, like what he thinks about those
sure.
who have the faith and who are driven by either God that he's describing, right?
Yeah, and then to juxtapose it to how he finishes with the Jew on the motorbike, cruising.
Yeah, and
That definitely human.
I was reading, or I guess he commented on the Jew on a motorbike, saying that they had a Jewish driver and that they were having a lot of conversations just about Judaism with him. And Mark had said, he's like, you know what you'll never see is a Jew on a motorbike. And then I guess they were going to a performance and they like turned up a street and then the whole street was a bunch of Jewish people on on motorcycles. And so he was like,
A
what's going on?
parade,
Like,
a
yeah, like
parade of them
or
going
just
down
like
the
the whole
street.
neighborhood. Like, I don't know how he knew they were all Jewish, but yeah, that's what they said. Like, he just like he saw a whole bunch of them and he was like, his mind was just like, huh, okay.
Well,
Like,
as we know, Mark is psychic, so this does make sense. This does make sense. And we'll talk about Mark being psychic after in this next song. But just to wrap up the garden, it's also fun that he says the line in this song. He knew the evil of the phone. The bells stopped on Sunday when he rose. And then in the previous song, he says, I used to have this thing about Link Ray. I used to play him every Saturday. God bless Saturday. I just really like this, even if it's just a through line that a given listener like myself can can try to connect some very rough dots to from one thing to the other. It's nice that he did that or didn't do that intentionally because it's here and it's cool. It's a nice through line and connection. Everyday mundane human beings, but then also godlike human beings, such as he puts Link Ray in the category of that. It's a very perfect third track where you're really diving deep.
yeah, you get a whole lot of a lot of Mark out of this song. I mean, not that you don't typically, but
Yeah,
interesting to see his perspective here.
definitely. So to wrap up the first side A, we're gonna get the first proper introduction to Brix Smith on in the fall. Mark is in love, and why not write a song together and put it on this first album? And let's get into it deep, but let's listen to Hotel Lodell.
And it's painless, sitting in subterranean, ancient reference to Mesopotamia.
This could be very much a if it was just Bricks singing it and that phaser guitar that she's strumming, this could be a Cure song, an early Cure song, could it not?
Oh yeah, I mean it was straight 80s for a little while there.
Yeah.
I did appreciate it more on headphones this time
Mm.
than I have.
Hmm.
The subtleties are there for sure.
Like we kind of said, this song came about from one story goes that they had room for another song. So Mark said, "Why don't you play this song, Bricks?" And so they set up a chair with her guitar in the studio, and they said, "Just play the song, a couple of times." And she said she played it like three, four times, and she thought that she was starting to get warmed up, and she's like, "Okay, I'm starting to get it now. I'm ready to do like a real take." And Mark's like, "No, we're good. We got it. We got we got the take that sounds good." And and she was like, "Oh, okay, all right." And then so they just put all of this instrumentation around it, and then Mark just added his lyrics to it, and it became this, which is basically the first duet you get on a fall album, which, as far as I'm concerned, I'm all for introduction of a new element into the fall that's not necessarily just a new player or a new member, but a new dynamic and sound to the band. You get something here that we definitely have not heard on a previous fall album, a duet between Mark and the way his lyrics come in over kind of the top of hers and like slowly almost he's doing like a mic check and then fading into his story and his interpretation of of course, weird Nazi stuff, which is fun too.
Yeah,
So,
Civil
yeah.
War,
Yeah,
Nazis.
Civil War. Well, this is based on a real hotel where they had to stay one night when their van broke down and they had to stay at this German hotel. They found it like an inn, basically. They said there was a lot of weird stuff going on here as far as they were concerned, where he lifted up his mattress and he found an old some sort of Nazi insignia flag or blanket or something like that. And then when Mark and Bricks were in their room at night, they said they looked out the window and they saw this woman walking across the field and she looked like ghostly and she was walking across the field and she had a bag like a plastic bag or something that was filled with blood and they were like, what is going on here? What is going on in this place? And they found out the next day that it was actually a slaughterhouse back there was, there was an
Yeah.
actual slaughterhouse behind the hotel. And so this was a perfect, as usual, ripe situation to be taken and put into a different context into a song. And so it's half of Brix's old band's kind of demo and then taken into a fall world in the studio. And the band, I think, does a great job. Even Steve Hanley's bass, that's a meandering bass that's really melodic, but also it's not uplifting and positive at all, but it's not dark. It's kind of in a perfect middle zone where you could really, whatever mood you're in, it could probably fit your mood perfectly.
Especially with the juxtaposition of the new female vocals, right? Like it elevates the song into a different
Yeah.
kind of octave that you're not used to. So
Yeah.
yeah.
In the fall aren't old guys, it's not a bunch at this point, especially they're not a bunch of old guys, but a young female voice that's she's kind of just belting it out, sitting there playing her guitar. It's kind of really, it's a ballad too, which is really weird too. A
Yeah,
haunting
no, it's
ballad.
yeah, it's not bad, but it's not what you expect.
I like it. I like it as a closer to the A side. Bricks came over from Chicago with Mark and they started living together and she came over to Manchester and she came originally from California to Chicago and her interpretation of Chicago or her first impression was, man, this place is like gray industrial city. And so it was like it was a big change for her transition from California. But then she said she went to Manchester and she's like, wow, this place is even more of that. It's even more of that than Chicago, which is, to hear her say that, like to see her perspective on all those three places together, it kind of shows that she liked California. She liked California. She wasn't ready for the harshness of the brutalism architecture.
Straight lines.
I mean, Mark didn't even have like a refrigerator or access to warm hot water that easily. So she had a big transition.
Yeah, what, 20 years old, 21,
Yeah.
newly married.
So as we're flipping the record over, should we take a look at this album artwork? Steve, what do you feel about this front cover, Perverted by Language?
Some grotesque gentlemen. I don't know. I mean, I guess they're out on the town, maybe. Got some power lines. You got a cross that says it saves you. This dude is maybe smoking a newspaper.
Yeah,
Got
the
got
newspaper
some
filled with lies.
got some buckwheat in your teeth.
The newspaper always catches my attention first. He's grabbing that newspaper filled with lies. It's a businessman. He's got rings on. They are looking demented, and they're in a very industrial. You got to assume it's Manchester since Mark loves putting Manchester on these covers, and the colors. You're getting a lot of colors. You're not getting this much color on a fall album since the Grotesque album cover.
Yeah, the orange shirt. I mean, maybe it's a worker and
Mm.
the owner, is it one of the laborers and the head of the place walking out of the factory together?
Yeah, a worker, and then there's a garbage can, it looks like, in the back. You see this little garbage can in the middle,
Yeah, it looks like it's got
filled
a
with stuff. Uh,
cockroach climbing out of
yeah,
it.
it got some bugs
There's a bottle of
and
booze on the ground.
so a bottle of booze, another newspaper on the ground.
What does that say? Daily Rag propaganda.
So you're either reading a daily rag that's filled with propaganda or a daily rag filled with lies. And that's Mark's news of the day. And this cover was made by a guy named Klaus
Klaus.
Kastenskield, one of Brix's friends. An interesting change of pace, as we know from previous fall album covers that were almost exclusively designed by Mark, and with the help of his sister and then other individuals for layout and such, and some band photos. It's tongue in cheek. We gave Mark a hard time and the band a hard time for the previous album covers that look so thrown together. I gotta say, I do miss it. I do miss the scribbling, the text on the front, the giving me a lot of information about the intention of the album and the track list, even a statement, a purpose statement. What do you think? How do you feel?
Sure, you might not get liner notes, but at least you're going to understand what you're getting when you pick up the album versus this is just it's almost going to kind of blend into the rest of the new releases for that week, right? Where you're flipping through, you might not necessarily.
This does fit into an 80s album bin. Or, I mean, it's definitely more grotesque and it's more intriguing than probably most, but it's more straightforward and almost, I wonder how much rough trade influenced this. I always feel like Mark was going to take the reins and be like, no, we're doing this. But this is Brix's friend who's
Yeah,
an
a
artist.
little influence there and a little, hey, the label wants something more standardized. What can we
Maybe, yeah.
do? I'm not going to give them everything, but I'll get my way one way or another.
Yeah, and as we'll talk about moving forward with the albums that Brix is on, she was very clear and forthright, which I appreciate about her intention. She always thought that there was going to be at least one or maybe even two songs on every fall album that she was a part of that she thought were actual legitimate hits that were going to be chart topping hits. So it was always in her mind to that the fall were capable of that or that they produced something like that. This might be the start of even that, of the thinking of Mark, let's go this route. More people will pick it up out of the bin if they see something that looks like other albums, but it says The Fall. It's very interesting to think about it in that way. Um,
Sure. And look at it. It's got everything you like. Dark buildings, weird people. Come on,
yeah,
Mark. This is it. It's got a businessman with a forked tongue. You hate
yeah,
businessmen.
yeah.
Um,
You hate businessmen, but you love trash music, and you love so let's put a trash can, and then you
you
like
got that
a
song
lot of
about
religion on
God.
here.
Put a
Yeah, a lot
yeah,
of religion on here.
put a cross, Mark. We got this.
But I do, dang, but I do miss him. I miss the
The DIY aspect of
Yes,
it
definitely. It's
is
more organic. This seems so put together.
I was
Now
gonna
let's
say
flip it over. Let's
you're
flip it.
almost you almost make it gets you makes you nervous about what's going to be inside of it, right? Like not knowing, not ha I guess you could have heard the single, so you know, but
Yeah,
you're
I
kind of
guess
like,
in
is
that
this going
way.
to be the
Hmm.
same sound as what the prior one was, or is this going to be produced in a different way?
Yeah, I think actually, if you put it in that way, as we discussed about how hard it was for, I don't know, even just me personally to crack this album as like what kind of is this? Not that it needs to be a cohesive, coherent thing, but what is this as far as in terms of the fall? That's basically what I was trying to figure out. Even this album cover kind of gives you like, this is not gonna be the same fall.
Yeah.
Let's flip it over. On the back, we get a bunch of little video, almost it looks like video captured screenshots of the band members.
Yeah, for
It
all those single videos that they did, at
exactly,
least some of them. Yeah,
exactly.
I think it even said, oh no, oh,
Yeah.
they're like a profile too, because yeah, it's got their name and what they're playing on the album right below the picture, which is again not very fall like.
No, it's not to have them all singled out individually.
Sure.
You'd have the snapshot of them just hanging out, like sitting on a couch or even in the photo booth, right? But then these video captures are actually maybe my favorite thing about this whole album cover, the front and the back. The video captures are so interesting where you have Craig Scanlon with the most interesting, with a big ass bug crawling on his face, looks like, and it's like a reference to Twilight Zone, which was definitely one of Mark's favorite shows. We get Mark just looking, scratching his nose, looking cool, trying to look cool, looking cool. We got Bricks in a bar.
The
Looks
bar
like that.
actually outside.
No, that's the
No,
bar. There's a
this is a
cash
background.
register. Yeah.
Okay.
It kind of looks like the empty bottle to me, but I know it's not. And then we got Paul Hanley, where it says Paul Hanley drums and electronics, and then he's in front of all these like TV screens, like it's almost like a TV dubbing video recording place, which is cool, which is so fun. And then you got Carl Burns, who looks like he looks like he's out of some horror film to
I was
me.
gonna say it looks like he's like foaming at the mouth. I
It
don't,
does.
I can't
It
really
does.
tell. The
They
whole
really
is
picked the right picture for him because it makes him
uh,
look really intriguing. And then you got Steve Hanley down here, which is kind of bogus because the picture with Steve Hanley is Mark in the foreground and then Steve Hanley playing the bass in like a white shadowy background. It's just like way in the background. That's so bogus. And then, but then they make up for it because right next to it they give another picture of Steve Hanley. But would you think that they're going to give him a picture by himself? No, it's just him with Carl and Brooks. He doesn't even get a picture by himself. And then you get the whole lot in the corner, which is from the Kicker Conspiracy video, I believe, where they're
yeah.
sitting in the stands. Great video. I'm glad they got their money's worth out of those videos because those videos are really, really excellent. The
That's
pink
what
color, I mean,
I
I think
like
the
the
pink
pink
color,
color. Yeah.
yeah, I do like the pink color too.
I
It
would
could
have
have
liked to
easily
see
been
it.
white, which would have been less interesting too.
I would have liked to see it like fresh in 1982.
Yeah, totally.
Like see what color that
Mhm.
pink actually is.
Yeah, we're looking at an old copy. Cool. Let's flip it.